Hi everyone, welcome to the MrpTech Podcast. This is episode 78. My name is Matt, and this is the weekly podcast discussing everyday tech for everyday people. Thanks so much for listening in this week. And before I begin this week's podcast, I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the United States this week. Hope you all have a great holiday and able to spend some time with your families and just enjoy the day itself before all the holiday craziness begins. And those of you who like to go shopping on Black Friday, in the masses of people that are usually out and about on those days, and we get into the craziness of the holiday season. Hopefully we can all enjoy a great Thanksgiving and really just enjoy those holiday traditions. I thought I'd record a episode this week just before Thanksgiving rolls around, and if you haven't listened to last week's episode first, I suggest you do that, episode 77, where I discuss the differences between Wix and HostGator and my experiences with both of them. And over the last week or so, I purchased an extra domain with HostGator, and I also was trying to transfer a domain from Wix to HostGator to see how that worked. The new domain that I purchased basically took about 5 days for me to get access to. Normally it says 24 to 48 hours. For some reason, when I purchased the domain, it didn't give me a notification to automatically set the DNS servers to HostGator. And so I waited about 2 days, nothing happened. Called HostGator. Well, actually, then I realized what my mistake was. I reset the DNS servers to HostGator, had to wait another 24 to 48 hours. And when that happened, I also had to call HostGator and just get them to do something on the back end in order for me to have access to it. No idea what that was. So after about 5 days, I was able to actually start building a website in WordPress. It's been almost a week now, and the domain mrptechreviews.com is in a transfer status. I opened a ticket with HostGator. They looked into an issue and had me give them the transfer code. I gave them the transfer code, and just this morning I get another email from HostGator saying that the transfer code from Wix is invalid. So I've had some issues with that. It wasn't as easy as I expected it to be. As I mentioned last week, I had some issues from the very start, and that was user error on my part. This happens to be the transfer code itself that you need to do in order to transfer domains from one person to another. So I still got to work that out, and I'm sure it'll take just a little bit more of my time in order to get that happening. But once that happens, my plan is to take down MrpTech Reviews, build a new WordPress site, and then put it back up as quickly as I can. And just like anything, there's a learning process to all of this. So when I first was learning Wix, I had to learn how to use it, how to set it up, and sort of slowly tweak the website as time went on to what I wanted it to be. And that's sort of the impression that I'm going to have with WordPress. So before I sort of get into my experiences this week with HostGator, what I want to talk to you about over the weekend, I went to visit my parents on this past Sunday, I believe. And when I got there, I was visiting my parents, and I got a notification on my phone that I had an email from a listener. And I want to read some of this email because it was the most in-depth and well thought out email that I've ever received for this show. I'm not going to read everything word for word, but I want to talk about a few things. This email comes from Bob, and he basically, here's what Bob says. He says, I have an extensive tech background and absolutely love to learn. This morning I came across your podcast show number 77, and it struck several chords with me, so I thought I'd shoot you a note. HostGator is a big yes. I have hosted our quite extensive site with them through a business account for many years, and I couldn't be happier. These folks get it. Their tech support has been stellar over many, many support conversations. They must have one incredible HR department to land so many great employees. great attitudes, extremely knowledgeable, and always willing to engage in additional research to serve their customer far beyond their obligations. Now, I absolutely agree with Bob in what he's saying here. Over the last week, as I mentioned last week, I was a little overwhelmed when I first took a look at the HostGator portal, cPanel, and all of the WordPress. I mentioned just wrapping my head around it at the very beginning was a little tough. One of the things that I had to do, I had to go onto their online chat support. And when I did that, I'm not sure where their chat support online is located, but I got an impression that they didn't quite understand, or they weren't quite reading things carefully enough as I wrote them. And I tried to write things out in great detail of what the help I needed was, and I repeated myself several times exactly what I was looking for, with no additional content in my messages. This is what I need. This is what I'm trying to do. And chat support wasn't great. However, when I gave up on that and I decided to call HostGator, it's complete night and day. The phone support is absolutely incredible, and they are able to. They're so knowledgeable that they don't even need to send me on to the next level of a higher up supervisor or advanced tech support or whatever you want to call it. They have all the answers that I need right away, and some of the things I was looking for are not everyday topics. So the HostGator support is absolutely incredible. So Bob went on and he wrote me a few things that he came into some problems with a former host, which I won't name. Basically had an issue with what they called unlimited storage. And I won't go into the whole story, but basically another provider basically canceled his service, saying they violated the terms of service, even though it really wasn't a violation of terms of service. And he did a bunch of research. Bob ultimately ended up doing and landing with HostGator. So he says sometimes the worst experience can lead to a better or even best situation. And he said, bottom line, be cautious of the term unlimited storage and make sure that you're in compliance with their terms of service. So yeah, that's exactly what I went and did. I read their terms of service for HostGator, and I'm well aware of the things I can and can't do. But that's just a message to all of you out there that are maybe considering buying a website. Just read the terms of service. Make sure you're not violating anything that due to like negligence, that type of thing. Then you'll be much better off in the future. Bob went on and he gave me a really in-depth step-by-step process of the way HostGator is set up. I got my head wrapped around it. After a day or two, I started realizing it wasn't as complicated as I first thought. He talked about the billing login and cPanel and WordPress login. I am much better at understanding all of this now. So basically, HostGator, the way it's set up, the first thing, you have your billing login. There's nothing more than just a account management tool, basically. And that's where you can edit your profile and a few other things like that. The cPanel is where obviously you're going to get all of your work done. The apps that you can have access to, like MySQL, PHP, MyAdmin, FTP, and all those other things. I totally get it. Those are some tools that I'm very familiar with. And last but not least is your WordPress login or your website editor, that type of thing. I have found that with HostGator, they give you very limited access with a lot of things. And at first, I thought it may have been HostGator, but I'm sort of convinced that it's probably not HostGator. I would imagine it's the same with any provider, that they give you limited access with like a website builder, and they want you to pay for the advanced pro features. Well, it seems to be a lot of pro features here, and wherever you move, there's always a pro feature that you can spend $5 a month, $10 a month, even $15 a month to get those pro features. WordPress has been pretty good. There's still a lot of themes that you can purchase and tools that give you very basic functionality, but there's a lot of great free stuff that I've been finding. And so once you really wrap your head around it, it isn't that complex. It was just jumping in cold feet to a whole entirely new situation for me. And like Bob says, you basically have to divide and conquer and just learn little bit by little bit and break it apart. Because if you look at everything as a whole, you might not see the whole picture. And so you have to really break things down. That's exactly kind of what I tell my students when they're trying to practice a selection that they're working on for our concert. If you can't master it by looking at it all at once, break it into small pieces and learn it piece by piece. And eventually you'll learn how to do everything. And so that's where I stand with HostGator. Is I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to understand the way things are set up. And on Saturday, I was finally able to get into WordPress, and I was finally able to start building a website for a county music association. And WordPress was pretty user-friendly, I found. I picked it up. I was watching some WordPress videos and tutorials online, so I kind of had an idea how to use things. It's not quite perfect yet, but the more plugins that I add, the more features that I seem to be looking for are available through plugins, and I'm able to customize things a little bit more. And as I mentioned earlier, now I have a site set up, but it's going to take several iterations to get it to where I want it to be. And I'm okay with that. I'm learning. So that was my step-by-step process. I'm starting with a website that needed very little functionality. And once I get to MrpTech Reviews transferred completely, I'll use that as sort of like a stage 2, where I'm now looking for some advanced features. And then when I'm ready and I feel like I'm comfortable with WordPress, then I'm going to take my business domain and switch it over to HostGator and build that for my music organization that I run. And so that's my 3-step process for this whole transfer to HostGator. So Bob has convinced me to stay with HostGator. So thanks, Bob. I'm going to go with HostGator, and really I am enjoying the powerful tools. It's, as I mentioned, it's not perfect, and I was aware of that going into it, but I'm finding that as time goes on, it's going to be much, much more useful than a Wix site, and the websites are loading faster, and there's so many tools and flexibility that you have that I wish I sort of would have jumped into this a year ago when others have recommended HostGator to me. I just wasn't ready. And I'm also realizing that you don't need to do everything in HTML. A lot of it is taken care of for you. However, you do have the power, if you have the HTML skills, to write your own HTML in addition to things with like WordPress and those type of tools and plugins. So you have that flexibility there, which I didn't have before with Wix. As I mentioned before, Bob wrote a really in-depth look, and Bob was also a ham radio operator, and he said he got his license decades ago, back when it was still required using CW or Morse code, and he had to take his FCC test down at the local FCC office. And he's had a long history of building electronics and kits from scratch. He worked as an electronics engineer and marine biologist for the Seattle Aquarium, and had a long career doing that. And one of those things that he did is he overheard me talking about this idea that I had about building a Radio Shack for students at my school. And Bob recommended a few different things. I just wanted to bring up on the show. He said that, have I ever heard of a company called Baofeng, or Baofeng, I believe it's pronounced. I always say it wrong. They basically make extremely respected radio gear at a affordable price. Yes, I have heard of Baofengs, and I know that they're growing in popularity. He recommended a radio out there he says he gives them to family members as a emergency backup. And it's the Baofeng Black UV-5R V2 Plus. So Baofeng Black UV-5R V2 Plus. It's a dual band, two-way radio. It has some pretty advanced features in it. It sells on Amazon for about $35, which is really inexpensive for a radio. But he says if you go to vipon.com, sometimes you get him a deal for as low as $17.49. Haven't checked that out yet, but I would really like to see if that's even a possibility. And if you've never heard of that website, you can actually get some great deals on Amazon products. But if once you have a product in your Amazon cart and you can enter the Vipon promo code, it'll reduce the price, which is pretty awesome. I'm going to have to look into that as well. I did go to the website, and they're offering some really great Black Friday deals coming up soon. So just a little plug for anybody out there looking to get some shopping done. Check out that website because it'll really lower some prices on Amazon if it's the right item for you. So I'm going to look into those radios and maybe even consider purchasing them for family members. I think it's kind of a fun idea, and I know there are some open frequencies that you can use for radio contact that you don't need a license for. So it might be worth something. Taking a look at something. I'm not really sure yet, but just another thing to keep in the back of my mind for the holidays. I think it's always great to have a backup option when it comes to, things like emergencies, and just being able to contact someone if you need it. So I do think that they might be a good idea for a school situation. And I'm also still waiting on the local radio club. They're working with me, and they're very interested, and I believe that they're working on some things to help us out. I'm not really sure what that's going to be yet. We'll probably won't find out till the second week in December when they have their next meeting. But things are happening. It's pretty awesome, and I'm really looking forward to doing this for my students. And lastly, Bob says, anyway, I'm sure that's all way more than you have time to read, but I really wanted to share what I felt was some pertinent perspective that just may help you leave your life a little bit better. Your podcasts are also leaving the world better than you find it, Matt, and I appreciate your efforts. I wish everyone got and lived by that simple principle. If they did, our world would be much better off, and keep up the good work. Thanks again, Bob. So Bob, thanks for the email. It was such a well thought out and well written email. I don't get that very often, and I will take into consideration just about everything you've written in this email. There's so much information. I couldn't read all of it in the show, but definitely opened my eyes to a few things that I didn't know about in the future, and sort of reinforced a few things for me as well that I had been learning about, or just in general with the podcast itself. So thanks, Bob. And I'm going to plug your website for you. I took a look at his website that he has built for, must be a company of his that he runs. It's called sign2me.com, sign2me.com. Basically, it's a online resource for baby sign language and early learning resources, and looks like a really extensive website. Says used by over 2.5 million. Trusted by 2.5 million users worldwide. That's pretty awesome. And that may be something that I look for in the future. If and when the time comes to needing something like that. So, sign2me.com, early learning resources. Go check out that website. You might find something interesting there if you've never seen it before. So I'm going to start wrapping things up here. The next show will come out after Thanksgiving, and I'll give you an update on everything. Should have a new topic as well coming up after Thanksgiving. Bob also, the one thing he mentioned at the very last of his email, what's the name of your band? He said he'd had a long history of his son playing in a local high school. Family loves big band music. The name of my band, if you're curious, is called the Adirondack Jazz Orchestra, and you can see that over at AdirondackJazzOrchestra.com. if you're interested. We don't put a lot of videos on YouTube because the music is copyrighted. I do use YouTube sort of as an archival purpose. I upload them and then I set everything to private just to archive the videos that we have from our performances. If anybody's interested in taking a listen to that, basically that group is a group of local to my area, professional musicians and music educators. They get together. We get together basically once a month. We live stream our concerts, do a lot of student jam sessions, perform at local schools and different functions in that respect. We are not the Count Basie Orchestra or, the Glenn Miller Orchestra or something like that. But the group has existed since 2003, basically when I graduated from college. And I was looking for a professional group to play in. There wasn't any around, so everybody recommended I started one. So I did that, and I'm not going to make this a music podcast, but for those of you who are interested in big band music, that's the one and only plug I'm going to give for that group. That website will go down, AdirondackJazzOrchestra.com. I'm planning on bringing that down in the middle of December for a month while I rebuild that site. Hopefully, that's going to be my timeline there. So that's that. If you'd like more information on that, just email me, mrptechreviews@gmail.com. Any comments, feedback, future show ideas, anything like that, send me that email, mrptechreviews@gmail.com. I love hearing feedback. Makes it totally worth doing this week after week. And I've been getting more and better feedback every week. So I definitely appreciate that. And thanks everybody for listening. Hope you all have a great Thanksgiving and enjoy the time with the family. That's going to do it for this week. We'll see you next time.